Lolita slowly opened her eyes, only to realize she wasn't in a bed. She was lying beside a dirty gutter, her body covered in dust and her hair stiff with sweat. "Ah, you're finally awake," an old woman selling roasted corn nearby said, shaking her head. "You've been lying here for 3 whole days like a dead chicken. I even thought you had gone to meet your ancestors." Lolita struggled to sit up. Her head pounded, her dress was torn, her shoes missing, and her memory blank. She couldn't remember how she landed on that street. She couldn't even remember the last meal she ate. 3 days? She whispered, confused. The old woman gave her a pitying look, but still added with sarcasm, "Yes, 3 good days. If you were a goat, by now your owner would have roasted you. But since you're human, I just watched you sleep there like a broken radio." Lolita's eyes stung with tears. She had no home, no family, and nowhere to run. So what did she do? She sat on the edge of the street, stretched out her weak hands and begged. At first, people pitied her. A few coins, half-eaten bread. One man even dropped leftover rice wrapped in nylon like she was a dustbin. Some mocked, "Useless girl, can't you go find work? Begging is your job now, eh?" Lolita swallowed her pride with each insult, because hunger has no respect for dignity. Days rolled into weeks, and just when she thought she had found a little corner to survive, a group of shop owners chased her out. "Go away from here. You're scaring our customers with your dirty face. Go beg somewhere else." And so, with nowhere left, Lolita dragged her weak body to the grand iron gates of the biggest bank in the city. Her hands shook as she held a small tin plate, the only possession she could proudly call her own. She sat quietly by the corner, hoping for mercy from strangers. The first day, people looked at her like she was a rotten tomato. Some laughed out loud. One woman hissed, "Ah! Even here? Can't the government chase you beggars off the road?" The security men at the gate didn't make it easier. Each time she stretched her hands, they mocked her. "Madam beggar, where's your shop? On a bank you on work today?" Their laughter cut like knives, but Lolita swallowed it. After all, hunger doesn't care about dignity. She sat every day, waiting. Sometimes a kind soul tossed a coin or a crumpled note without even looking at her face. Other times people spat on the ground near her like her presence was a crime. Days rolled into weeks, weeks into months, months into years. And still Lolita remained there, same corner, same plate, same torn clothes, same painful routine. Rain fell, the sun burned, and the city changed around her, but she stayed. What nobody knew was that behind the dirt and brokenness sat a woman who once had the brightest future. A woman whose name once echoed in lecture halls, but now she was only that beggar girl at the bank. Little did she know that fate was planning a scene so shocking, even the bank walls would remember it. One fateful day. It was an ordinary morning for Lolita, the same hopeless routine. She sat cross-legged by the bank gate, her tin plate resting on her lap, her eyes heavy with hunger and shame. She no longer expected kindness, just survival. But fate had marked this day different. A loud honk broke the silence, and suddenly the street buzzed. Heads turned as a sleek black SUV rolled in, followed by 2 shining cars behind it. The convoy stopped right in front of the bank's massive doors. Everyone whispered, "It's him! Nathaniel Namba, the youngest billionaire in the city!" The driver slowed as they passed the gate, and for a split second Nathaniel's sharp eyes caught Lolita's face. His heart gave a sudden jolt. He gasped, like someone had punched the air out of his lungs. Her eyes, those eyes looked familiar. He leaned forward in his seat, straining to see her properly. Dirt covered her skin. Her hair was tangled like old ropes, but something about her face, it dragged him back to a memory he thought he had buried. The car stopped. Nathaniel stepped out, tall and commanding in his custom-made suit. Instantly his security team formed a circle around him. Cameras flashed. Passers-by admired his expensive watch, his polished shoes, his power. But Nathaniel didn't notice any of it. His gaze was still stuck at the bank gate, on the girl with the tin plate. "Sir, this way, please," one of his guards said, opening the glass doors. Nathaniel walked in, but his step was slow, heavy. He was inside the glamorous banking hall, yet his mind was still outside, glued to the dirty beggar girl sitting on the ground. He couldn't shake it off. Why does her face feel like a ghost from my past? Inside the banking hall, everything was moving at its usual fast pace. Suits rushed around, files stacked high, polished shoes clicked against marble floors. The smell of new money and expensive perfume filled the air. Nathaniel Namba, the billionaire everyone respected, sat at the head of a long mahogany table. Bank executives lined both sides, pushing documents toward him. "Sir, these need your signature. The transfer to London requires your approval. The quarterly balance sheet is ready for review." Nathaniel picked up his pen, his gold watch glinting under the lights. His hand hovered over the paper. But instead of reading the numbers, all he saw was her face. That beggar girl outside. Those eyes, torn dress, messy hair. But those eyes. "Sir, are you all right?" one director asked, noticing Nathaniel's pause. Yes, continue," Nathaniel muttered, forcing himself back. He scribbled his signature, pushed the file away, and reached for the next. But no matter how many papers they laid before him, his mind kept drifting. Every zero looked like her teardrops. Every signature felt empty. One manager started a long explanation. "Sir, the new investment strategy will generate an estimated profit margin of..." But Nathaniel wasn't listening. He was staring blankly at the glass wall of the banking hall, as if he could still see her sitting by the gate. The manager coughed. "Sir?" Nathaniel blinked, quickly adjusting his tie. "Yes, good, proceed." They nodded, pretending not to notice his distraction, but whispers spread quietly. "What's wrong with him today? He looks unsettled." Nathaniel signed another document, but his fingers trembled slightly. He dropped the pen and leaned back in his chair, his jaw tightening. He remembered the way her head was bowed, the way her thin hands clutched that tin plate like it was the only thing keeping her alive. Something was clawing at his chest. Who is she? Why can't I look away? Why does she feel so familiar? The boardroom kept buzzing, voices rising, pages turning. But Nathaniel felt like a prisoner inside his own success. Millions of dollars on paper before him, yet the only thing his soul cared about was a girl in rags sitting by a gutter. Finally, he exhaled heavily and stood. The directors looked up, shocked. "Gentlemen, excuse me for a moment," he said, his voice deeper than usual. He didn't wait for their reply. Nathaniel turned sharply and walked out of the hall, his footsteps echoing louder than his heartbeat, because he knew if he didn't go back to see that girl, he would never forgive himself. Nathaniel's polished shoes struck the marble floor as he stormed out of the banking hall. His security team hurried after him, whispering into earpieces, forming their usual protective circle. But Nathaniel raised his hand firmly. "Give me space," he ordered. The men froze, confused. Billionaires didn't usually walk alone in public, but the look in Nathaniel's eyes left no room for argument. The glass doors of the bank slid open, and there she was, still sitting exactly where he had seen her. The world seemed to slow down. Cars passed, people moved, but Nathaniel only saw her. Lolita. Her thin fingers rested on the tin plate, her shoulders hunched like she carried the weight of the whole world. Nathaniel's breath caught. He walked closer, his heart hammering. The sound of his footsteps made her raise her head slowly. Her dull eyes met his sharp ones, and for a moment, time itself froze. In a trembling voice, he whispered, "Lolita, is this you?" Her lips parted. At first, no sound came out. Then, with a shaky breath, she whispered back, Nathaniel Namba." The name hit him like thunder. Only she used to call him that, back in their university days when everyone mocked him for being slow, dull, and hopeless. Nathaniel's knees buckled, and before the shocked eyes of strangers, the billionaire bent down beside the beggar girl. His tailored suit brushed against the dusty pavement, but he didn't care. His voice cracked as he looked into her face again. "Lily, is this really you? You just..." Disappeared. No word. No goodbye. I searched, and now I find you here like this." Lolita's eyes filled with tears. She tried to hide her face, ashamed, but Nathaniel gently lifted her chin. The street grew silent. People gasped. The same crowd that mocked her every day now whispered among themselves, "Wait, why is the billionaire talking to that beggar girl?" But Nathaniel didn't care about them. At that moment, the only person in his world was the girl who once believed in him when nobody else did. He then said to her, "Lolita, please come with me." Lolita's lips trembled. She shook her head slowly, tears streaming down her dirt-streaked cheeks. "No, Nathan." Her voice cracked, barely above a whisper. "We are worlds apart now. Look at you, powerful, rich, surrounded by guards and cameras. And look at me." She glanced down at her torn dress, her bare feet, the tin plate in her lap. "I'm nothing but shame. Your friends, your family, they'd be embarrassed to see you near me." Her words cut deep, and for a moment the silence was heavy. People around leaned closer, holding their breath, waiting for the billionaire's reply. Then suddenly, Nathaniel burst into laughter. Not a mocking laugh, but a raw, heartfelt one that echoed across the bank's marble walls. "Embarrassed?" he repeated, shaking his head. "Lolita, have you forgotten who I was in school?" Lolita blinked in confusion. Nathaniel leaned closer, his voice trembling with both pain and pride. "Have you forgotten how they laughed at me? How they called me slow, Nathan? A dull boy who could never make it in life?" Her tears fell harder as memories stirred. "Have you forgotten?" Nathaniel continued, his voice breaking. "How my own stepmother rejected me? How my so-called friends turned their backs on me? How miserable my life was before you, Lolita, came to my rescue?" He placed a hand gently on her shoulder, ignoring the gasps of onlookers. "You were the only one who sat with me in the library when the whole class mocked me. You stayed up at night to teach me, to encourage me, to tell me I wasn't useless. You," his voice cracked, "you believed in me when even I didn't believe in myself." Lolita covered her face, sobbing silently. Nathaniel's eyes glistened with tears, his voice dropping to a whisper only she could hear. "So tell me, Lolita, how can I ever be embarrassed of the one person who gave me the wings to fly? Without you, there would be no Nathaniel Number, the billionaire. Without you, I'd still be that miserable boy everyone laughed at." He lifted her chin again, forcing her to meet his gaze. "You call yourself nothing, but to me, you've always been everything." The crowd was stunned. Some looked ashamed, others moved to tears. The security men exchanged awkward glances, unsure if they were guarding a billionaire or watching a love story unfold. Lolita's lips trembled as she whispered, "But Nathan, the world will never understand." Nathaniel smiled through his tears, his voice firm. "Then let the world choke on its own pride. I understand, and that's enough." As Nathaniel's words hung in the air, his mind drifted back time. The noise of the busy street faded, and suddenly he was no longer standing in front of a bank. He was back at the University of Abba, years ago. The lecture hall buzzed with laughter. Students were scribbling notes, some whispering loudly, "Look at Nathan again. He's stuck on question 1. Dull boy. He'll never pass." Nathaniel sat at the back, his face pale with embarrassment. He stared at the math problem in front of him, but the numbers danced like mocking ghosts. His hands shook. His classmates threw paper balls at him, giggling. "Hey, Nathaniel, dull boy," one shouted sarcastically. "Do you need a dictionary to understand 2 + 2? The hall erupted in laughter. Nathaniel lowered his head, wishing he could disappear into the floor. But then, from across the room, a soft voice rose above the noise. "Enough!" Lolita James stood up, her eyes blazing. She was one of the top students, brilliant, confident, respected. The hall went quiet. "Do you all have no shame?" she scolded. "Laughing at someone struggling instead of helping? Is this what education has turned us into, mockers instead of learners?" She walked straight to Nathaniel's desk, her books in hand. "Come on," she said gently. "Let's study together after class." Nathaniel blinked, stunned. "Me?" Yes, you, she smiled. Unless you think I can't handle the challenge. For the first time in a long while, Nathaniel chuckled. That night, they sat side by side in the university library. While others were out partying, Lolita patiently explained equations, read aloud from textbooks, and broke down every difficult concept until his face lit up with understanding. You see, she whispered with a grin, you're not dumb. You just needed someone to believe in you. And believe she did. Night after night, she stayed with him, even when her own assignments piled up. When he grew frustrated, she encouraged him. When he wanted to give up, she reminded him, Nathaniel, the world may laugh now, but one day you'll stand taller than them all. Those words burned into his soul. Back in the present, Nathaniel's eyes grew misty as he stared at Lolita. Do you remember, Lolita? He whispered, his voice breaking. When they all mocked me, you were my only friend. You gave me courage. You gave me hope. Without you, I'd still be that rejected boy. Lolita pressed her lips together, fighting tears. She remembered it all too well. The laughter of the crowd, the long nights in the library, the way she'd told him he was destined for greatness. But she never imagined that greatness would find her again, here in her lowest hour. But Nathaniel wasn't done. He continued softly. Lolita, do you remember that bright morning at the university? Flashback continues. Nathaniel was sitting under a tree, hunched over a textbook, when a sleek car pulled into the campus compound. Out stepped his father, Mr. Cole, and beside him his glamorous stepmother, Mrs. Cole, her gold bangles jingling, her perfume so strong it seemed to announce her arrival before she even spoke. Nathaniel froze. He already knew what this visit meant. Where's that boy? Mrs. Cole barked, scanning the grounds like a general hunting for a runaway soldier. Here, Ma, Nathaniel mumbled, standing nervously. Mr. Cole cleared his throat. Nathaniel, we've decided this school thing isn't working. Your grades are a disaster. It's better you learn a trade, tailoring, maybe farming. At least you won't waste our money here. Students nearby snickered. Nathaniel's heart sank. His throat tightened. He wanted to beg, to plead, but his courage failed him. Before he could utter a word, a voice rang out. Excuse me, sir, madam. It was Lolita. Books in her hands, determination blazing in her eyes. She stepped forward boldly. Please don't withdraw him, she said, her tone firm but respectful. He just needs more time. I've been tutoring him and he's improving. He can cope. He just needs a chance. Mrs. Cole's head snapped toward her, her eyes narrowing. And who are you? His classmate, Lolita replied without fear, and his friend. I know he has potential. If you take him out now, you'll kill that potential before it even starts. Gasps echoed. Students whispered, how could a mere classmate dare to challenge the billionaire's wife? Mrs. Cole's lips curled into a sneer. She looked Lolita up and down with contempt. So this is what my stepson is wasting his time on? Shameless girl! Who do you think you are? Because you can recite books? Do you think you can interfere in our family decisions? She jabbed a finger toward Lolita's face. Must mind your business, you empty-headed poor girl. How dare you open your mouth in matters that don't concern you? Are you trying to trap him with pity so he'll marry you one day? Cheap ambition. The insults rained like fire, but Lolita stood tall, her voice steady. I'm not here for myself, she replied. I'm here for him. If you walk him out of this school today, you'll regret it tomorrow, because Nathaniel is not dumb. He just needs someone to believe in him. And I believe in him. Mr. Cole hesitated, his brows furrowed. Mrs. Cole hissed in disgust, dragging his arm. Let's go. This boy is hopeless, and now he has a shameless beggar fighting for him. But Nathaniel's father stopped, staring at his son, at the determination in his eyes and the fire in Lolita's words. For the first time, he wavered. Fine, Mr. Cole muttered at last. He stays, but if he fails this semester again, I'll pull him out myself. With that, they stormed back into their car and drove away, leaving a cloud of dust and a silent crowd. Nathaniel's hands shook as he turned to Lolita. You defended me against my stepmother? Lolita smiled gently. Nathaniel, I told you, you are not hopeless. One day you'll prove them all wrong. Mark my words. Back in the present, Nathaniel's eyes glistened as the memory faded. He looked at the broken woman before him, and his heart ached. You see now? He whispered, his voice trembling. How can I ever forget the woman who once stood up to my own family for me? Lolita, I owe you my life. Nathaniel's voice was low but firm, the kind that carried weight even when said in calmness. He bent closer, ignoring the stares of bankers and guards who peeked through the glass doors to see why their boss was still outside with a beggar. Lolita, he said, his tone almost breaking, you need to clean up first before we talk. Whatever it is that dragged you down this far, this. He gestured to the dirty clothes, the plate in her hand, the dust around her body. This is not your level. I know you. This is not you. Lolita's eyes watered instantly. She tried to look away, ashamed, but Nathaniel gently tilted her chin back. Don't hide your face from me. Not you, Lolita. You were the one person who saw me when no one else did, the one who believed in me when I couldn't even spell my own name right without shame. Her lips trembled as she whispered, Nathan, please. Your friends, your family, what will they say when they see me like this? A beggar at your side? They will laugh at you. Nathaniel suddenly chuckled, shaking his head. It wasn't the laugh of mockery, but the laugh of someone who had heard a very silly joke. Lolita, do you still see me as that boy whose stepmother mocked in front of everyone? Do you still think I care about what people say? Haven't you forgotten who I was in school? Haven't you forgotten how miserable I was? How rejected I was? If I had listened to people's laughter, I would have been a dropout, tailoring cloth in one corner or digging holes on a farm. But you, his finger tapped her shoulder gently, you stood for me. You fought for me. Lolita lowered her eyes, silent, but her tears dropped one by one into the little rusty plate she used for begging. The sound of the coins rattling against her tears almost broke Nathaniel's heart. He took a deep breath, stood up and stretched his hand out to her. His security men shifted uncomfortably, exchanging looks, but none dared to interfere. Nathaniel turned his head toward them sharply. Step back. Give us space. Immediately they obeyed, moving a few steps away, though their eyes never left the scene. Nathaniel's hand remained in front of her. Come with me, Lolita. Right now. No more arguments. No more shame. I'm driving you straight to my house. Whatever happened, we'll talk later. But first, you must rise again. And I'll make sure of it. For the first time in years, Lolita felt the warmth of hope flicker inside her. But still, hesitation sat heavily in her chest. She looked at his hand as if it were fire. To take it meant stepping out of the shadow of poverty and shame, but it also meant facing a world that had already spat her out. And yet Nathaniel's eyes told her one thing. He wasn't going to leave without her. Lolita sat frozen for a long moment, her eyes darting between Nathaniel's hand and the dusty ground beneath her. She could hear people whispering, some laughing, some wondering aloud how a billionaire could be speaking so tenderly to a beggar. Her chest tightened in shame. But Nathaniel didn't move. His hand stayed there, steady and firm, as if he was silently saying, I will wait as long as it takes. Finally, with trembling fingers, Lolita placed her rough palm into his. Nathaniel's grip closed gently but securely around hers, pulling her up from the cold concrete she had sat on for years. The plate slipped from her lap, coins clattering across the ground, but he didn't even glance at it. To him, Lolita was the treasure. The guards quickly opened the SUV door, their faces stiff with confusion. Nathaniel guided her inside as if she were the most important guest of his life. She sat beside him, too stunned to speak, while the convoy began to roll forward. The ride was silent at first. Lolita's mind spun wildly. What am I doing here? What will people say? What if I embarrass him? She sat with her head bowed, clutching her hands tightly on her knees, but Nathaniel kept stealing glances at her, his expression soft and full of memories. Every now and then he smiled faintly, as though thanking God for this second chance. Soon the SUV turned into a long private driveway, flanked with trimmed hedges and fountains. Lolita's breath caught in her throat when she saw the mansion ahead, grand, elegant, glowing under the afternoon sun. She shrank into her seat, feeling more like a stranger than ever. The moment they arrived, a line of uniformed staff rushed forward to open the doors. Nathaniel stepped out first, then turned and offered his hand again. Hesitant but with no strength left to argue, Lolita took it. "Take her in," Nathaniel ordered softly. "Prepare a bath, fresh clothes, everything, and serve lunch in the main dining hall." Within minutes, Lolita was ushered into a spacious guest suite. For the first time in years, warm water touched her skin. The maid who helped her tried not to stare, but even she looked shocked at the transformation as the dirt washed away. Clean towels, scented oils, a soft robe, things Lolita hadn't dreamed of touching, were all handed to her like it was nothing. When she finally changed into a simple but elegant gown, she hardly recognized herself in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't a beggar anymore. She looked like the Lolita who once walked confidently in her school uniform, defending a boy everyone had rejected. Meanwhile, Nathaniel waited at the dining table. A meal fit for royalty had been set. Roasted chicken, fresh vegetables, steaming rice, and glasses of fruit juice glistening under the chandelier. When Lolita finally entered, her steps were slow, her eyes unsure. Nathaniel stood immediately, pulling out the chair beside him. "Sit," he said warmly. "This table has been waiting for you." Her throat tightened. She lowered herself into the chair, her eyes fixed on the food. For years she had begged for scraps. Now here she was, seated across from a billionaire she once defended, about to eat like a queen. Nathaniel filled her plate himself, smiling as he slid it toward her. "Eat, Lolita. You need strength for the story you're about to tell me." Nathaniel leaned forward, his face tightening with concern. He knew something was terribly wrong. His voice dropped to a whisper, almost as if afraid of questions on his mind. "Lolita, what happened to you? Your father was rich, powerful, respected. I remember how even professors stood up when he walked into a hall. Then the news broke. People said your parents' flight from London crashed. We all mourned. But when exams were closed, I couldn't sit still. I traced your house, and when I got there, your uncle told me you'd been sent abroad for further studies. He said it was because of the trauma." He shook his head slowly. "I believed him. I thought you were safe, studying somewhere better. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you reach out?" Lolita's eyes glistened instantly. She pressed her napkin to her lips, but her hands trembled. For a long moment she couldn't speak. Finally, her voice broke through, hoarse but steady. "My uncle lied, Nathaniel." She took a shaky breath. "1 week after my parents' burial, I gathered courage and told him I needed to return to school. My heart was heavy, but I wanted to honor them. I wanted to finish what they started for me. That night, while we were eating, his wife laughed at me. She asked jokingly, 'Which course are you even studying?' I smiled, foolishly proud, and told them, 'Law.' With excitement, I said it out loud, 'I am studying law.' Her lips trembled. Both of them froze. They looked at me like I had committed a crime. My uncle hissed, and his wife scoffed. She said, 'Law? What do you want to do with that course? Argue in court when we've already taken over your father's empire?' Nathaniel's eyes widened, his chest rising in sharp breaths. 'They said that?' Lolita nodded, tears spilling freely. That was the last thing I remembered. After their laughter, after their cruel faces, everything went black. When I opened my eyes again, I wasn't in my room or in my father's house. I was on the roadside beside a gutter. My head was pounding, my clothes dirty, my memory blank. I didn't even know my own name. Nathaniel's fists clenched tightly on the table, his jaw hardened. "God," he muttered, shaking his head in disbelief. Lolita's voice softened, but the pain deepened. A corn seller nearby told me I'd been lying there for 3 days, just lying like someone abandoned by the world. She said she thought I was dead until I moved. People passed by me, spat at me, mocked me, threw stones. I had no strength, no one to turn to. My uncle never came, he never searched for me. Because Nathaniel, she paused, her eyes locking with his, the very day of the burial, he had already taken over my father's empire, signed papers, claimed the properties. I know I was nothing but a burden standing in his way. The room went silent. Even the servants paused in their duties, stunned. Nathaniel's chest tightened with anger, but he forced himself to let her finish. It took me more than a year, Lolita continued, voice trembling, before the fog in my head lifted. Slowly, my memory returned. My parents, the house, the school, you. Her eyes filled again. But by then, I was already living on the road, and something inside me broke. I was scared of going back. I was scared of standing up to them. I had no courage, no voice left. I thought, maybe it was fate. Maybe I wasn't meant to live the life I once dreamed of. So I settled. I begged. I survived. Because maybe I wasn't meant to be alive at all. Her shoulders collapsed under the weight of her words. Nathaniel shot to his feet, his chair scraping against the marble floor. His face burned with fury. No, he said fiercely, his voice echoing through the dining hall. Lolita flinched, but he quickly bent forward, his voice softening. Don't you ever say that again. You are not a mistake, Lolita. You were never meant to beg on the streets. They stole from you. They tried to erase you. But you are still here. And I swear to you, as long as I breathe, you will never sleep by the roadside again. Lolita's lips trembled as she whispered, But Nathaniel, we are worlds apart now. Your family, your friends. What would they say seeing me like this? Nathaniel let out a broken laugh, wiping the corner of his eye. Worlds apart. Lolita, have you forgotten who I was back in school? Have you forgotten how everyone rejected me? How even my own stepmother came to withdraw me from class, calling me a waste of money? You stood up for me when no one else did. If I am anything today, it's because you refused to let me give up. How could I ever be ashamed of you? The silence that followed was heavy, but for the first time in years, Lolita's heart dared to hope again. 1 year later. The world had changed for Lolita. The same streets that once mocked her name now carried whispers of admiration. No longer did she sit in rags with a tin plate at the bank gate. Instead, she walked through those same doors with her head high, dressed in crisp black and white, the gown and wig of a barrister shining with pride. Yes, Lolita James had graduated from the University of Aber as a barrister. The girl who once begged for crumbs had risen to dine with kings. And at the centre of her rise was Nathaniel, who never once let go of her hand after that fateful day. It wasn't long before her brilliance caught the world's attention. Nathaniel, proud and deliberate, made a move that shocked the business community. He nominated her as the chief legal advisor to all his businesses. Every single one. The banks under his empire, the shipping company that carried goods across seas, the oil firm that fed nations, the tech company, the hotels, the media houses. Every company bore her signature. At first, many board members sneered. A former beggar girl? A street rat in our boardroom? But it took only one fiery courtroom victory for their laughter to die. Lolita stood in court like a lioness, shredding a rival company's case with sharp arguments and fearless confidence. By the time she walked out, even her worst doubters bowed in respect. 6 months later, Nathaniel struck again, but this time with vengeance. Quietly, strategically, he bought out all her father's companies, every last piece her uncle had stolen. It wasn't just business, it was war. Nathaniel fought with billions as his weapon. One by one, the shares shifted hands, the titles changed, and the empire that once carried her father's name returned to where it belonged. The final blow came on a Friday morning. Her uncle, once arrogant and untouchable, walked into his office to find men in suits waiting with files. "Sir," They said, "By order of purchase, this company now belongs to Mr. Nathaniel Cole. You are required to vacate immediately." The merchants mocked Lolita, who left her to die, stood trembling as the truth hit him. He was finished. His accounts were drained, his properties repossessed, his empire crumbled beneath his feet. For the first time he was the one grounded, reduced to a shadow of his former self. Lolita stood by Nathaniel as he watched the news report that evening. The screen showed her uncle trying to push through a crowd of journalists, face pale, voice cracking. Nathaniel turned to Lolita, his eyes softening. "Justice," he said simply, raising a glass. Lolita smiled, her eyes glistening, not with pain this time, but with gratitude. "And a new beginning," she whispered. The girl who once thought she wasn't meant to be alive was now alive more than ever, strong, powerful, and standing at the very top of the world with the man who never forgot her. 8 months later, the day finally came. The city had never seen a wedding like it. Streets were lined with cars, the church decorated with gold and white roses, and the media filled every corner with flashing cameras. The headlines blazed everywhere. The beggar girl who won a billionaire's heart. As the limousine rolled up to the grand cathedral, people stretched their necks, some whispering in disbelief, others weeping in joy. Could this really be the same girl who once sat outside the bank in rags, begging for coins? When Lolita stepped out of the car, the gasps were deafening. Dressed in a diamond-studded gown, her beauty shone like the sun. The very people once mocked her now pressed their hands together, humbled. But not everyone was smiling. Inside, Nathaniel's father and his cunning stepmother stood at the altar with stormy faces. They had fought this wedding for months, calling her unworthy, a stain, a disgrace to the family's name. And now, even on this sacred day, they tried one last time to block it. "Nathaniel," his father growled, "if you go through with this, you will lose your inheritance and your honor. This girl is not for our kind." His stepmother sneered, her voice dripping with venom. "Think, Nathaniel, she was a beggar on the street. Do you want to drag shame into our lineage? End this madness now." The whole hall went silent. Guests shifted uncomfortably, cameras zoomed in. For a moment the air hung heavy, like the wedding might collapse. But Nathaniel didn't flinch. He stepped forward, eyes blazing, voice steady as thunder. "Enough." He turned to face the crowd, his words echoing through the cathedral. "You see this woman? Lolita James is not just my bride. She is the reason I am standing here today. When everyone, including you, called me worthless, she stood by me. When you tried to pull me out of school to make me a farmer, she defended me with courage. She taught me, encouraged me, and believed in me before I even believed in myself. Without her, there would be no Nathaniel Cole the world celebrates today." Gasps and murmurs filled the hall. Nathaniel turned back to his father and stepmother, his voice rising even stronger. "I will not ride on the horse of success without the woman who built the foundation of my life. If it means losing your inheritance, then so be it. My real inheritance is standing right here in this gown." The crowd erupted into applause. The father and stepmother, red with humiliation, stormed out of the cathedral. But Nathaniel only smiled, turning back to Lolita, whose tears glistened with pride. Moments later, the priest's voice rang out, "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife." The hall shook with cheers. Fireworks burst outside. The world celebrated, not just a wedding, but a love story that had conquered shame, poverty, betrayal, and lies. Nathaniel kissed his bride, and together they walked out hand in hand, no longer billionaire and beggar, but king and queen of their own destiny. And from that day they lived happily ever after, loved, respected, and celebrated by the world that once rejected them. From a dusty street corner where she begged for scraps, to the grandest altar where the world celebrated her love. Lolita's story is proof that destiny can never be buried, no matter how much the world tries to cover it. And Nathaniel, The billionaire who chose love over pride showed us that true wealth is not counted in dollars, but in loyalty and courage. Together, they rewrote what love means. So, besties, never look down on anyone. The beggar you mock today could be the queen you bow to tomorrow. If this story touched you, drop a love emoji in the comments. Tell me what part gave you chills, and don't forget, subscribe for more heart-shaking stories. Love you, besties.